Welcome to the deep dive.
Yeah.
We love to get our hands dirty here. But today we're going full-on nature documentary and venturing into the world of trees. I know what you're thinking. Everyone knows about trees.
Right.
Right. But there's a whole hidden world beneath the surface that's honestly mind-blowing.
It really is,
We're
yeah.
going to uncover those secrets.
Yeah.
From the tips of the leaves all the way down to the intricate networks below the ground.
It is incredible how those roots spread.
Oh, it's amazing.
Yeah.
And to guide us on this journey, we'll be using Roots of Complexity, a fascinating book that really digs deep into
So a great
the science of trees.
Yeah.
So today we're focusing on Chapter 1, the biology and physiology of trees. And think of this like getting a behind-the-scenes tour of how a tree actually works.
Yeah. And it's not just about, memorizing the parts of a tree or anything like that.
Right.
We're talking about the ingenious ways they've evolved to survive and thrive in pretty much every corner of the planet.
Exactly. So let's start with the basics, shall we?
Yeah.
Chapter 1.1, Anatomy of a Tree. Roots, trunk, branches, leaves, the building blocks, right?
Yeah, the fundamentals.
But I have a feeling there's way more to it than that.
Oh, absolutely. Take roots, for example. Most people just think of them as kind of anchors holding the tree in place.
Right. Makes sense.
But the amazing thing is a tree's root system can actually change throughout its life.
Really?
Yeah, it adapts to the environment.
So it's not just like one size fits all.
No, not at all. A young tree, competing for resources, it might start with a deep taproot to reach those deep water sources.
Makes sense.
But as the tree grows, it needs to get nutrients over a wider area.
Right.
It develops a more extensive network of fibrous roots.
Interesting.
They spread out, kind of like fingers, exploring the topsoil.
Like the tree is strategizing.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, what do I need now? How do I change?
Adaptable, yeah. And this is especially crucial for trees in those urban environments.
Oh, yeah, good point.
Imagine a tree growing next to a sidewalk. Its roots have to navigate compacted soil, underground pipes, limited space.
Oh, it's a tough life for those city trees.
It is, yeah.
But they do it.
They do. It's a real testament to their resilience.
Yeah, makes you appreciate those street trees we often take for granted, huh?
Yeah, for sure.
All right, so roots are the foundation.
Right.
What about the trunk? What's going on in there?
Well, you can think of the trunk as the central support beam of a skyscraper,
Okay.
but it's also a bustling transportation hub.
Oh, interesting.
Inside, you've got the xylem, which pulls water and nutrients upwards from the roots,
Okay.
and it's powered by transpiration.
So like a straw almost.
Yeah, like a network of tiny straws. The water evaporates from the leaves, creates the suction,
Wow.
pulls the water up from the roots.
So the tree is using evaporation
Yeah,
to pump water up hundreds of feet.
pretty ingenious, right?
It is, yeah.
And then you have the phloem, which carries sugars from the leaves down to the rest of the tree.
So it's a two-way street.
It is, yeah. Essential supplies constantly moving.
Fascinating. And this is all happening beneath the bark.
Beneath the bark, yeah, which acts as protection against pests, disease, even fire.
Wow. Busy place under there.
It's a constantly renewing shield, yeah.
It's amazing. You just see a tree
Right,
and you don't think about all that's going on underneath.
exactly.
Okay, let's climb up to the branches. What's their role?
Well, the branches are like scaffolding, reaching out to support the crown, those all-important leaves.
Right. Providing structure.
They provide structure for the tree to capture sunlight and exchange gases with the atmosphere.
Okay, and speaking of leaves, they're like the solar panels of the tree, right?
Exactly. They're the primary site of photosynthesis, that process where trees convert light energy into chemical energy.
Yeah. Photosynthesis, we all learned about it in school, but honestly, I don't remember much beyond the basics.
Right, it can seem pretty simple at first glance, but when you look closer at a leaf, you see how perfectly it's designed for this complex process.
So it's more than just a flat green surface.
Oh, much more.
What's so special about the structure?
Well, the veins, for example, they're like a network of tiny highways,
Okay.
delivering water and nutrients from the roots and carrying away the sugars produced during photosynthesis.
Fascinating.
And then you have those tiny pores on the underside of the leaves called stomata.
Stomata, right?
They regulate gas exchange, opening and closing, to let carbon dioxide in for photosynthesis
Oh, okay.
and releasing oxygen as a byproduct.
It's incredible how something as seemingly simple as a leaf
Yeah,
is actually this incredibly high-tech miniature factory.
it really is. And that brings us to the engine that powers it all. Chapter 1.2, photosynthesis, and energy production.
Okay, photosynthesis. It's one of those processes everyone's heard of,
Right.
but I think a lot of us have a pretty simplified understanding of how it actually works.
Yeah, it's often explained as this simple equation. Sunlight plus water plus carbon dioxide equals sugar and oxygen.
Right, easy peasy.
But in reality, it's an unbelievably complex series of chemical reactions.
Okay, so break it down for us. What's really happening inside those leaves?
Well, it all starts with chlorophyll. That's the pigment that gives leaves their green color.
Right.
Chlorophyll acts like a tiny antenna, capturing light energy from the sun.
Okay.
And that energy is used to split water molecules and release electrons.
So sunlight is actually splitting water.
It is, yeah.
What happens next?
Well, those energized electrons, they power a chain of reactions that ultimately convert carbon dioxide from the air into glucose, a type of sugar.
So the tree is essentially building itself out of air and sunlight.
In a way, yes. And as a byproduct of all these reactions, the tree releases oxygen into the atmosphere.
It's amazing to think that every breath we take
Right.
is connected to this process happening in trees all around us.
It really highlights our connection to the natural world, doesn't it?
It does, yeah. Makes you appreciate those forests even more.
Yeah.
They're not just beautiful landscapes, they're these essential oxygen factories. All right, so we've got the tree capturing sunlight, producing energy in the form of sugars. But like any living organism, trees need more than just energy to grow, right?
Right.
Chapter 1.3 focuses on water and nutrient uptake mechanisms.
Okay.
How do they get the other essential ingredients for growth?
This is where those intricate root systems we were talking about earlier come back into play.
Right.
Those tiny root hairs extending from the roots are like tiny sponges, soaking up water and dissolved nutrients from the soil.
But soil isn't just dirt, right? There's a whole ecosystem down there.
Oh, absolutely. It's teeming with bacteria, fungi, microorganisms. They break down organic matter, release nutrients.
And didn't you mention a special relationship between tree roots and a type of fungi?
Mycorrhiza.
Yeah, mycorrhiza.
They form these incredible symbiotic relationships with tree roots.
So what's going on there?
Imagine these tiny fungal threads extending out from the roots, reaching even further into the soil than the tree could on its own.
It's like the mycorrhiza are acting as extensions of the root system.
Yeah, helping the tree get the most out of the soil.
And in return?
In return, the tree provides the fungi with sugars produced through photosynthesis.
So it's a win-win situation.
It is, yeah.
Yeah.
Perfect partnership.
It's fascinating how everything is so interconnected in nature.
It really is.
Okay, so the tree has absorbed water and nutrients from the soil, but how does it actually use these resources to grow? Chapter 1.4 talks about growth patterns and tree development.
Okay.
Trees don't just pop up overnight, do they?
Not at all. Growing from a tiny seedling into a towering giant, it's a long and complex process.
Yeah.
And it's not just about getting taller, it's about getting wider and stronger, too.
So there's more to it than just reaching for the sky.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Trees actually grow in two ways, primary growth and secondary growth.
Oh, I see.
Primary growth is all about getting taller.
Okay.
Happens at the tips of the roots and shoots, where cells divide and elongate, pushing the tree upwards and outwards.
So that's how the tree reaches for sunlight, explores the soil. But trees also need to get thicker and stronger.
Right? To support their increasing height and weight.
So that's where secondary growth comes in.
Exactly. That happens in a layer called the cambium, just beneath the bark.
Oh, okay.
The cambium produces new cells that add layers of wood to the inside of the trunk, making it wider and stronger.
So that's how those iconic growth rings are formed.
Precisely. Each ring represents a year of secondary growth.
And I've heard that the width of the rings can tell us a lot about the conditions the tree experienced.
Yeah, it's true. Wider rings usually mean good growing conditions, plenty of sunlight and water.
Okay.
Narrow rings might suggest hardship, like a drought.
It's like reading a tree's diary, deciphering the story of its life through those growth rings.
I love that analogy. It really is a fascinating way to connect with a tree's history.
Yeah, it makes you realize that trees aren't just these static objects. They're dynamic, living organisms.
Constantly adapting.
Constantly adapting and responding to the world around them. And this incredible diversity of adaptations is reflected in this sheer variety of tree species we find across the globe, right? Which brings us to chapter 1.5, Tree Species Diversity and Classification.
A huge topic. I mean, it's mind-boggling to think about all the different types of trees out there.
It is. I mean, where do you even begin to classify all these different trees?
It's a big task, but botanists have developed systems to categorize trees based on their evolutionary relationships and shared characteristics.
So like a family tree for trees.
Yeah, kind of. One of the fundamental divisions is between angiosperms and gymnosperms.
Okay, big words. What's the difference?
Angiosperms are flowering trees, while gymnosperms are cone-bearing trees.
Okay, so like oaks, maples, cherry trees, those would be angiosperm.
Exactly. And pines, firs, spruces, those are classic gymnosperms.
So it all comes down to how they reproduce.
That's a key distinction. Angiosperms produce seeds enclosed within a fruit or flower, while gymnosperms have naked seeds, often borne on cones.
Right, right. And I know we can also classify trees based on whether they lose their leaves seasonally or keep them year-round.
Absolutely. Deciduous trees, like those maples and oaks we talked about, lose their leaves in the fall,
Right.
while evergreen trees, like pines and spruces, retain their needles throughout the year.
And that helps them thrive in those colder climates, right?
Exactly. It's an adaptation for those shorter growing seasons.
It's amazing how nature has created such a variety of tree species, each one perfectly suited to its particular environment.
It really is. And classifying trees is just the first step in understanding this amazing diversity.
It's like opening the door to a vast library of knowledge, with each species having its own unique story to
A
tell.
world of stories, yeah.
All right, so we've covered a lot of ground here, from the tiniest root hairs to the towering canopies.
Yeah, we have.
What are some key takeaways you want our listeners to remember from this deep dive into tree anatomy and physiology?
Well, I think the most important thing is to remember that trees aren't just static objects in the landscape. They're dynamic living organisms
Right.
with these complex internal systems that allow them to adapt and thrive in all sorts of conditions.
That's a great point. And I think it's also important to remember the interconnectedness of everything in nature,
Yeah.
From those symbiotic relationships between trees and fungi to the role of trees in producing the very air we breathe.
It's a beautiful web of life.
It really is. And understanding the biology and physiology of trees, well, it's the first step towards appreciating their vital role in our world and, inspiring us to protect them.
Absolutely, for generations to come.
Well said.
It's amazing, isn't it, how a single tree can be like a world unto itself.
It is. All those intricate systems we talked about in part one.
Right. But then, when you zoom out and look at the bigger picture,
Yeah.
the interconnectedness of a forest,
Oh, yeah.
it's truly mind-blowing.
It's a whole other level.
It is. And that's actually where we're headed in part 2 of our deep dive.
Perfect.
We're moving from that individual tree to the forest as a whole.
Okay, I'm excited for this.
Chapter 2 of Roots of Complexity dives into the fundamentals of forest ecology.
All right, forest ecology.
We're talking about understanding those intricate relationships that make a forest thrive.
Okay.
Interactions between trees, other plants, animals, fungi, even the tiniest microorganisms.
So it's like this delicate balancing act.
It is, yeah, with all these different organisms relying on each other.
And it all starts with the structure of the forest itself. Right?
Yeah, the foundation of this balance, is the structure.
Okay.
Imagine walking through a forest. Have you ever noticed how there are different layers, almost like levels in a building?
Now that you mention it, I have. Sometimes I'm walking beneath a dense canopy of leaves. Other times it's more open. I can see the sky.
Exactly. That's what we call the vertical structure of the forest.
Okay, vertical structure.
At the very top, you have the canopy, formed by the crowns of the tallest trees.
Right.
It's like a living roof, capturing most of the sunlight and influencing the conditions for everything below.
So it creates a whole different world down below.
It does. Less light, maybe even a different temperature.
And that creates opportunities for other plants and animals to thrive.
Exactly. That's where you get the understory trees and shrubs.
Right.
Adapted to those shadier conditions.
They have to be.
Yeah. Then you have the forest floor teeming with life, ferns, mosses, fallen leaves.
Like a whole hidden world down there.
It is, and all those decomposers breaking down organic matter, recycling nutrients.
Each layer supports its own unique community of life.
That's right. Think of it like a bustling city with different neighborhoods,
I like that.
communities occupying different niches, specialists that thrive in the sunny penthouse, others adapted to the shady street level, still others in the bustling underground.
It's a beautiful image of how diversity creates resilience,
It really is.
But how do all these different organisms actually interact with each other within the forest?
Well, one of the most fundamental interactions is the flow of energy through the food web. Remember photosynthesis?
Of course, that's the foundation of life as we know it.
Exactly. Trees and other plants are the primary producers, capturing sunlight, forming the base of the food web.
Okay.
Then you have herbivores, like deer and rabbits, feeding on those plants. And then the carnivores, like foxes and owls, preying on the herbivores.
So it's like this chain reaction of energy.
It is, but it's not a simple linear chain. It's more like a complex web with multiple pathways of energy flow.
Oh, okay. So give me an example of how that might work.
Well, let's say a squirrel eats acorns from an oak tree.
Okay.
Then that squirrel becomes prey to a hawk, which in turn might be scavenged by a fox.
Wow, so many connections.
It's amazing, isn't it? All these interconnected relationships, even if we can't see them all.
It really is.
And it's not just about energy flow. We also have to consider the cycling of nutrients.
Okay.
The essential elements for life: carbon, nitrogen, phosphorus.
So how do those nutrients move through the ecosystem?
Think of it as a continuous cycle.
Okay.
Trees and other plants, they absorb nutrients from the soil.
Huh?
Those nutrients are then passed on to herbivores when they eat the plants, and then they're returned to the soil through the decomposition of dead organisms and waste products.
So decomposers like bacteria and fungi, they play a crucial role in this cycle.
They're the unsung heroes of the forest.
They are.
Breaking down that complex organic matter, releasing nutrients back into the soil.
But the plants can use them again.
Exactly.
Like nature has evolved this perfect closed-loop system.
Yeah, a model of sustainability.
But unfortunately, human activities can disrupt these delicate balances, can't they?
They can, yeah.
What are some ways that we humans are impacting forest ecosystems?
Well, deforestation is a major threat.
Right.
When we clear forests for agriculture, logging, urban development,
Makes sense.
we not only remove trees, but we disrupt that whole web of relationships.
So it's not just about planting new trees, is it? It's about protecting those existing forests.
Exactly. Protecting and understanding the complex interactions that keep them functioning.
And that brings us to one of the most fascinating aspects of forest ecology, wouldn't you say?
Oh, absolutely.
The role of fungi, specifically those mycorrhizal networks that connect trees in ways we're just beginning to understand.
Yeah. Chapter 4 of Roots of Complexity really goes deep into this hidden world.
I can't wait to hear more.
Yeah.
We talked about mycorrhiza earlier, how they form those symbiotic relationships with tree roots, helping them access nutrients from the soil.
Right.
But it sounds like there's so much more to the story.
There's a whole underground network happening beneath our feet.
Wow.
These mycorrhizal fungi, they don't just connect individual trees to the soil, they actually connect trees to each other.
Really?
Forming vast interconnected webs that can span entire forests.
So it's like an underground internet for trees.
That's a great analogy. Through these networks, trees can communicate.
Wait, trees can actually communicate?
They can, yeah.
That sounds like science fiction.
I know, right?
How does that work?
Well, research is showing that trees can send chemical signals through these fungal networks.
Okay.
They can warn each other about insect attacks, drought stress, even share nutrients with seedlings struggling to establish themselves.
So it's not just a one-way street with the fungi benefiting.
Yeah.
The trees are actually using these networks to support each other.
It's a truly symbiotic relationship, both partners benefiting.
Amazing.
And we're only beginning to understand the implications of this communication. Some scientists believe that these networks play a crucial role in forest resilience, helping trees cope with stress and recover from disturbances.
That makes you think about a forest in a whole new way. Not just a bunch of individual trees,
Right.
but it's this complex, interconnected community.
Exactly. And this interconnectedness is even more apparent when we consider the concept of mother trees.
Mother trees. I've never heard of that.
Chapter 5 of Roots of Complexity explores this in detail.
Okay.
Imagine a large old tree
Okay.
lived for decades, even centuries. It's weathered storms, droughts, challenges. It's deeply connected to that mycorrhizal network.
So it's seen a lot.
It has. This tree has accumulated a wealth of knowledge resources.
Kind of like the wise elder of the forest.
That's a great way to put it.
I like that.
These mother trees act as hubs within the mycorrhizal network, connecting to a vast number of younger trees.
Wow, so they're really central to the whole network.
They are. And through these connections, they can transfer nutrients and water to seedlings that might be struggling.
So it's like the mother tree is nurturing its offspring.
It is, yeah, making sure they have the best chance of survival.
Incredible.
And it's not just about nutrients. Research suggests that mother trees can also send chemical signals through the network, warning younger trees about potential threats like insect attacks or disease.
So they're sharing their wisdom, helping the younger generation to be more resilient.
Precisely. And when a mother tree is nearing the end of its life,
Yeah.
it will actually transfer a significant portion of its carbon and other resources back into the network.
Wow.
It's like a final gift to the forest.
That's beautiful. It really does make you realize that a forest is more than just a collection of trees.
Right.
It's a community with generations interconnected, supporting each other.
A profound insight.
It is.
And it challenges us to rethink our approach to forestry. Instead of viewing trees as simply commodities to be harvested,
Right.
we need to start thinking about them as members of this complex community.
That needs to be protected.
Exactly. Managed for the long term.
It's a real shift in perspective.
It is.
It could change how we care for our forests in the future.
Absolutely. And as we learn more about these relationships, we're starting to see how important they are for the health of our forests, but for the health of our planet as a whole.
Speaking of the health of our planet, trees play a crucial role in mitigating climate change, don't they?
They do. Trees are incredible carbon sinks,
Right.
absorbing carbon dioxide from the atmosphere through photosynthesis, storing it in their wood, leaves, roots.
So, protecting and restoring forests is essential for reducing greenhouse gas emissions, combating climate change.
It's one of the most powerful natural solutions we have, yeah.
It is.
And the more we understand about the complex workings of forests,
Yeah.
the better equipped we'll be to manage and protect these vital ecosystems.
Well, this deep dive into forest ecology has been truly eye-opening.
It's been a fascinating journey, hasn't it?
It's amazing how much we can learn from simply taking the time to understand those relationships
Yeah.
that connect trees and all the other organisms that make up a forest.
It's a journey of discovery that never ends.
It doesn't.
And the more we learn about these systems, the more we realize how much we still have to uncover.
I'm already eager to learn more. But before we continue our exploration,
Yeah.
let's take a moment to recap some of the key takeaways from this part of our deep dive.
Okay. Sounds good.
So first and foremost, remember that a forest is much more than just a collection of trees.
Hmm.
It's this complex, interconnected ecosystem with a fascinating vertical structure.
Right. Creating this diverse array of habitats.
Exactly. And within this ecosystem, there's that constant flow of energy, cycling of nutrients,
Connecting all the organisms.
connecting all the organisms in that delicate web of relationships.
And we can't forget about the crucial role of decomposers.
Oh, those unsung heroes.
Breaking down organic matter, recycling those essential nutrients,
And of course, those amazing mycorrhizal networks that connect trees underground.
allowing them to communicate, share resources, even support their offspring.
Yeah, it's incredible.
And finally, the concept of mother trees,
Those wise elders.
nurturing and protecting the next generation.
It's such a beautiful reminder that a forest is a community
It is.
with generations interconnected, supporting each other.
And understanding this interconnectedness, it's crucial for appreciating the role of forests in our world.
Right.
And inspiring us to protect them for generations to come.
Well said. Welcome back to the deep dive. We've gone from the inner workings of a single tree to the whole forest ecosystem.
The big picture.
But get ready to be blown away, because we're about to explore how trees have adapted to thrive in some of the most extreme environments on Earth.
It's remarkable, isn't it, how adaptable they are?
It really is. You find them in scorching deserts, freezing tundras, on mountaintops, even clinging to cliffs.
It makes you wonder, how do they do it?
Yeah, how do they survive, let alone flourish, in conditions that would challenge most other life forms?
That's what we'll uncover in this final part of our deep dive. We're looking at Chapter 6 of Roots of Complexity, Adaptations for Survival, How Trees Thrive in Extreme Environments.
Oh, I love that title.
Get ready for some truly awe-inspiring stories.
I am. Let's start with those scorching deserts. How do trees manage to survive in such dry, arid conditions?
Well, think about the biggest challenges in a desert.
Okay.
Lack of water, intense heat, often very poor soil.
Right, not exactly ideal growing conditions.
No, not at all. But trees have evolved some ingenious ways to cope.
Give us some examples, I'm curious.
Take the saguaro cactus, for example.
Oh, the classic desert icon.
Exactly. It's not technically a tree,
Right.
but it's a perfect example of desert adaptation.
Okay.
Those pleated folds on its trunk, they allow it to expand and store huge amounts of water during those rare desert rainstorms.
So it's like a living water tower.
Exactly. And those sharp spines, they're not just for protection. They help to shade the plant, reduce water loss through transpiration.
Wow, so every feature serves a purpose in such a harsh environment.
Absolutely. Another adaptation you see in desert trees is deep root systems.
Oh, makes sense. Got to go find that water.
Yeah. Some species, like the mesquite tree, have roots that can go over 100 feet deep.
Wow, that's deeper than most wells.
Isn't it amazing? They're determined to find water no matter how deep they have to go. And then you have trees like the Palomerde.
Okay, Palo Verde.
It has green bark.
Green bark.
Yeah. It allows it to photosynthesize even when it loses its leaves during drought.
So like a backup plan for capturing energy.
Exactly.
Okay, so from the scorching desert, let's go to the opposite extreme.
All right.
Freezing, snowy landscapes.
Yeah. The tundra.
Yeah. How do trees thrive in those cold, harsh environments?
Well, you've got freezing temperatures, short growing seasons, often nutrient-poor soils.
So pretty brutal.
Pretty brutal. One key adaptation is their shape.
Okay, the shape of the tree.
Yeah. Many tundra trees, like the black spruce, have this conical shape, branches that slope downwards.
Why is that so important?
Well, it allows them to shed snow more easily, prevents those branches from breaking under the weight.
Oh, that makes sense.
It also helps reduce wind resistance, which can be fierce in those open landscapes.
It's like they've evolved their own architecture to withstand the elements.
Exactly. You also see adaptations like a thick, waxy coating on their needles to prevent water loss.
Okay.
Protection against freezing temperatures.
That's hard.
Some species even produce antifreeze compounds in their cells.
Wow, that's some next-level biology right there.
Isn't it? And then there's the challenge of those short growing seasons.
Right, they don't have a lot of time.
No, they have to make the most of those brief periods of warmth and sunlight to photosynthesize and grow.
So they have to be super efficient.
They do. They've evolved to start photosynthesizing at lower temperatures.
Wow.
And to grow rapidly during those short summer months.
Okay, so they've adapted to make the most of limited resources.
Exactly. Speaking of which, let's talk about trees growing in high-altitude environments.
All right, so we're climbing up to the mountains now.
Yeah.
What are the challenges up there on those windswept slopes and rocky cliffs?
High altitude means thinner air, less oxygen, intense sunlight, extreme temperature swings.
That's a lot to deal with.
It is. And then you have the challenge of growing in rocky, nutrient-poor soil, even clinging to sheer rock faces.
I can't even imagine trying to grow those conditions.
It's impressive, isn't it?
It is.
But trees have figured it out.
Well, how do they do it?
For example, a lot of high-altitude trees have shallow, spreading root systems.
Ah, so instead of going deep, they spread out wide for stability.
Exactly. They often grow very slowly, conserving resources, adapting to those long winters. Some species, like the bristlecone pine, can live for thousands of years.
Thousands of years.
It's mind-boggling.
It is. Enduring extreme conditions, becoming these living testaments to resilience.
They really are remarkable. And you know, those high-altitude trees often have a gnarled, twisted appearance.
Oh yeah, seeing pictures.
Shaped by the wind and the harsh weather. They might not be the tallest or most majestic, but they're incredibly tough and adaptable.
It's a good reminder that beauty comes in all forms.
It does.
And sometimes the most resilient organisms are the ones that have faced the most challenges.
Well said. And it brings us back to this underlying theme of our deep dive, you know?
Right.
The incredible diversity of the tree world and the remarkable adaptations that allow them to thrive.
It's been an incredible journey.
It has.
We've gone from the inner workings of a single tree to the complex web of the forest ecosystem, and finally to these awe-inspiring adaptations that allow trees to live in such extreme environments.
From deserts to mountaintops.
It's just incredible, and I hope this deep dive has inspired you, our listeners, to go out and explore the world of trees with a new appreciation for their beauty, their resilience, their vital role in our world.
I hope so too. Maybe the next time you see a tree, you'll pause for a moment, you know?
Yeah.
Take in its shape, its texture, its scent. Imagine the incredible journey it has taken to thrive.
Every tree has a story to tell.
He does.
A story of adaptation, connection, and the remarkable power of life to find a way.
Even in the most challenging circumstances.
Well said. Until next time, keep diving deep and exploring the wonders of our world.